Happy Tuesday. We are back. We're here with Kevin Allen of USA Today. We'll do our introductions, but I just wanted to mention that we have him on the show. Russ, you have some pre-show stuff?
Yeah, actually, I didn't watch last night because I was still wounded from the Jets game, but Monday Night Football apparently listens to social media now. So apparently there were a lot of penalties in yesterday's game, and I guess every time there was a penalty, they put up the word flag or whatever, and people on social media was like, this is getting stupid and annoying, and they did away with it. They apparently just did away with it, and I don't know what they did to make the change, but it made everybody happy, and that's an interesting thing because, we've all talked about it for years, how Monday Night Football maybe isn't what it used to be, and maybe you should let your viewership tell you what they like and don't like.
I like it.
Russ, is there anything playing in the background other than – because it doesn't sound like it's a reverberation of our –
I got nothing else open.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a TV's on or radio.
I got nothing on.
Yeah, okay, no problem. But go ahead, Kevin. Sorry, you were in Cleveland?
Yeah, I was in Cleveland for an NFL game, and I wanted to talk a little bit about downtown arenas. And, I just love downtown arenas, downtown stadiums, downtown arenas. And, the idea of an arena being in the suburbs, I wouldn't want to call it offensive, but it's so much better when it's downtown. It just feels like the city's alive when there's a game going on.
Mm-hmm.
For an NFL game to cover it about 9:30 in the morning, and the every street was just full of people with Browns jerseys on. And the only negative, it's nothing major, is that I tried to park obviously as close as I could to the stadium because when I get out of there after I'm done writing, it's going to be 5:30, 6 o'clock. So and by then, you don't want to make a long walk. But the closest I could park the stadium in Cleveland was 1.6
Kevin's
miles away.
Frozen at least.
Wow.
Am I frozen?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, did you hear what I said at all, or?
No, we heard you like the energy of the downtown stadium, and everybody was dressed in Browns garb. Yeah,
I do, and it was fun and just going on. The only negative of that is when you have a downtown arena, sometimes parking is a bit scarce. And I got there at 9:30 in the morning, and because I come out at 5:30 or 6 after writing, I want to be relatively close, and I don't mind paying. I just want to be close because I don't want to walk a long way. And the closest I could find to and arriving at 9:30 to park was 1.6 miles away. So it was cheap. Relatively speaking, for the NFL, it was $20. But when I came out, I wanted to get an Uber to take me to the car.
It's funny because I've been to downtown Cleveland and I've seen the stadium. I haven't been to a game there. But you're right. It is better when it's at a place like that. But they're known for legendary tailgating there. So it doesn't shock me. They're probably there as early as 7 in the morning.
Oh,
yeah.
That's like Buff. This is the thing. There's talk, and it'll continue until it actually happens. And I think it'll probably happen within the next 5 to 10 years of them building a downtown football stadium in Buffalo for the Bills. The Bills are like you were saying, Kevin. They're in Orchard Park. They're in the suburbs. It's a bitch to get to especially during the winter months because it's in the south towns where we get a lot of snow. But a lot of people like it because you can tailgate a lot of people go in with their RVs at like 3 o'clock in the morning on the day before and do the barbecue and get drunk and all that stuff. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen when they go downtown, whether the parking facilities will allow that. Sometimes there's zoning situations where they don't allow that kind of stuff to happen, but there is an energy when it is downtown. And Russ and I went to Seattle, went to a Mariners Royals game before the NHL draft. And even though it was a game in late June and both teams stunk, it was cool to get, park or take an Uber, walk a couple blocks, get to the stadium. Everybody's dressed up. It's all downtown. The football stadium's there. The baseball stadium's there. The feeling of that is
well, we're fortunate in the NHL that we have so many great downtown arenas. Like, going to a game in Pittsburgh, in my opinion, is just so much fun. Before just reasons I mentioned in Cleveland is everybody's out. They've got Penguins jerseys on. they're walking to the arena, before the game, even all afternoon long, you see people, and you set up that screen, and people come early to get their spot to watch the game on the big screen during the playoffs and so forth. And Toronto went to downtown, Montreal, Chicago's a little bit different. It's downtown, but the downtown is so big that you're not right downtown. You're on the kind of the west side. But
yeah, Philly, it's the same thing. They built like another area which is like 2 miles from downtown.
Right. But I just love the feel of downtown arenas, like the energy, and sometimes it can be, depending on how much parking they have, disruptive to the tailgating process. But then the tailgating just moves into the local bars, and that's not bad. Sure. Yeah, so
like I think the best example, Kev, is PNC Park in Pittsburgh. Like that is downtown, run smack through it, man.
Yeah, no, that is right too. And one other pre-show thing I wanted to bring up is I went to a memorial service for my wife's uncle in Wisconsin, and it was such a treat because there's something about taverns in Wisconsin that to me there's just a romance to them. And like I told my wife going down, I said, well, I have no idea where we're going, but I'm reasonably sure on the Friday night before the memorial service we're going to end up getting a fish fry in Wisconsin. And so we're driving along, still not arrived yet, and I saw in Grafton, Wisconsin, off of the highway, the Ghost Town Tavern. I said, that's it. Nothing about it. But we got off the highway, we went in, and of course they had both walleye and perch on the menu, and we had a fish fry. And when we showed up, it was early, like 4:30, but by the time we left, that bar was just packed. So that was experience number one. And then the next day we go to the memorial service. It's at 10 a.m., a very nice service out at a cemetery and so forth. But it was over in 50 minutes, and the luncheon, which was going to be served at a bar, of course, it's Wisconsin, wasn't start till noon. So we went to the bar anyway, and at 11 o'clock in there, and there's all these people sitting at the bar eating breakfast, bacon and eggs and Miller Lite. I mean,
it had to be Miller. It had to be Miller.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I don't know when the last time that I ordered or drank a beer before noon, but I did that day. When you're in Wisconsin, do as the Wisconsin people do. So, I
will tell you this. I've never had walleye, and perch I know is not, neither are like top shelf fish, but if you fry them, I'm sure they were great. And
they were, yeah.
Because I had perch before, but I've never had walleye.
Yeah. No, it was good. My wife had the perch. I actually had the haddock. But
there you go.
On Saturday at the memorial service luncheon, I had walleye.
Okay.
Because it was available. I mean, it's Wisconsin.
Yeah. Well, in Buffalo, it's beer battered fish fry on Fridays with lots of fries, and it's usually haddock, and that's a tradition. And I swear there's 50 places you could go for
the only experience I have with that is back in the day, Howard Johnson's, when they were around, would have like a Thursday all-you-can-eat fish fry. That was the closest thing I've come to that. Otherwise, on Long Island, even with all the fish that's there, it's so snooty, a fish fry doesn't exist.
I used to go for ice cream at Howard Johnson's back in the day.
It was the mint chocolate chip ice cream, and the fried clams were the best.
Banana ice cream. Okay.
Let's do some hockey.
Yes, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, September 10th, 2019.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen of USA Today.
And I'm the clear-throated Michael Agello. This is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, Kevin, since we have you on the show, I wanted to start with this because we've seen a number of reports over this, I would say the last week, of ongoing talks between the NHL and the NHL Players Association regarding the CBA. Now, we know that the deadline is September the 15th, which I believe is a Sunday, for the players to decide whether they will opt out of the current CBA or stick with the remaining 2 years of the current CBA.
But I think it's a very difficult read. The only thing I would say is that players are unusually optimistic. I was at the NHL media tour Thursday and Friday, and almost everyone I talked to thought, this is going to be resolved amicably. And Jonathan Taves, I put him in my lead because this is a guy that's very knowledgeable about issues, and he's been part of the process and before. And as he even said in my story, in the past he's been cynical about being able to reach an agreement, but he said he was very optimistic that it was going to turn out well. Now, I don't know what that means. I mean, they're going to say to him, give us something and we won't reopen, or they're going to reopen and they think, it'll be resolved quickly. I have no idea. I can make the case both for and against. The case for reopening is the players have some leverage. If they want to get to the Olympic Games, if they want something done about the escrow, if they want a different way of accounting on hockey-related revenue, whatever the issues they deem important, they probably have that now, because I don't think the league has any desire to have any work stoppage. The argument for not reopening is that things are going relatively well. The escrow and wanting to go to the Olympics, this system has not caused any hardship for the players. Top players are getting paid well. Is the middle getting squeezed? Yes, but they are in a salary cap world. So most players don't want to risk any sort of work stoppage, caused by a lockout by the league. So, maybe they'll just want to continue on the way it is, and then, do battle in a couple of years and not next summer at this time.
Kev, let me ask you this, because you're in Chicago, right?
Yes.
Okay. So my feeling was this was just, even though talks are going well, when you're trying to kick off a new season, I kind of think it's kind of a little bit of a downer when all of a sudden contract talks, CBA talk creeps into what you want to be the start of the season.
Well, I mean, I can see why you would say that, but I didn't sense that.
Okay.
That's why I think, normally I would agree. I can tell you that the fans and my readers particularly do not see it that way, because I was shocked how few people read my story. Because I wrote off this, and I'm just being totally honest, that, the fans must feel like this is going to be resolved, because just by judging by the number of people who took time to read what was going on with the CBA talks. I think fans, can see that these issues are not big enough, in their opinion anyway, to warrant any lockout and so forth. I thought that, my colleague of TSN, I think it was Frank. It was Frank Saravelli who wrote, do the players want to poke the bear? And I think that's a good analogy, because, right now the league would be happy to continue forward. The system working well for them, but are there things they would like to change? I'll bet there are.
Yeah.
And so if you poke the bear, are those going to come out? Are they going to say, okay, well, if we're here, this is what we're not interested in? Do they want a change in the RFA situation? Do they want to change, those RFA contracts? We're all talking about them.
Well, all right. So let's talk about that for a minute, because I kind of wondered how that was going to work out. Today at rookie camp, Chuck Fletcher came out. And, that's not a normal thing where the GM is going to come out like every day at rookie camp. But he came out today, and one of his messages was that he was going to talk to Ivan Provorov and Travis Konecny's agents today. But he had to tamper it down. Like, he basically was like, look, camp is Friday, and I'd love to have him in there. I'd like to be able to tell you it's really close, and I'd like to be able to tell you if it's far away. He goes, sometimes it works both ways. He was being honest about it.
Right.
But you tell the ambiguity that exists in the GM's mind about having camp and not having these players in is really bothering him. Ray Shero, a good example yesterday with Pavel Zacha, and cursing about it.
Well, yeah, I was going to mention, because it was funny, because I was at the rookie I was at the rookie camp in Buffalo, and the interview that John Warrell had with Ray Shero regarding Zaka, he informed him of the reports that were coming out that Zaka was going to go to the KHL, and Shero essentially said, I don't care if he goes to KHL, he can sign with Brampton or the ECHL or anywhere else.
Can I just throw in something here that, when I was reading this, that inserted in the second paragraph of any story that had that quote in it?
Mm-hmm.
Pavel Zacha is not Mitch Marner. He's not Johnny Gaudreau.
Right.
He's not any of these guys that everybody is worried about. And I understand completely what Ray Shero was saying. Like, if you told me that they lost Zacha for the season, it won't change how I feel about what's going to happen. Now, do they need him? Is he a key player? Sure, absolutely. But he's just not at that level where that, to me, that threat isn't the same as, if it was another player.
No, and today it was just reported about an hour ago that Zacha is going to sign a 3-year deal for a little over $2 million a season. So it's not a prohibitive deal, and it's a 3-year bridge, so it's not terrible. But now that I think that sort of sets the trend we've seen in the last 2 days, Kev. We've seen 2 players. Zacha's not one of that higher echelon, Marner, Point, Kachuk, Grantman, but he was an RFA, and Werenski, I think, was at the top level of the defensive guys. Both of them took 3-year deals. Werenski, the last year is backloaded, so if he gets qualified, it's going to be over $7 million a year. But it's got to be encouraging for the general managers that these players are taking shorter-term deals.
Well, all these things. My general position on this, as you guys know from dealing with me these years, is that this kind of stuff happens all the time, and in most cases they eventually get resolved, and it's usually much ado about nothing, as all the angst that we spend on it. But saying all that, last year we saw what happened with Nylander. And this year, what we're seeing is there's a lot more of them to deal with. And they're important players because the game has changed. And now we rely on younger players more on very important teams. Like Mitch Marner, I think he's got to be feeling as much pressure on him as the Maple Leafs, Kyle Dubas is feeling about getting him signed, because he saw last year what happened to Nylander when he was not here for long and then got off slowly. I'm sure he's keenly aware and wants to win the cup and feels, if things could have gone a little differently against Boston, we could have been in the finals. And, no one wants to go play. He doesn't want to go play in Europe. I mean, you can talk about it all you want, but he doesn't want to go there. So that's why I think ultimately he's going to get signed. I think the Nylander situation last year is going to impact how these players look at that. They don't want to get off to a poor start. They don't want their team to get off to a poor start. So I do think most of them will get signed. But I also think we're going to start the season with a couple that aren't, just because there's just too many of them.
Well, and this was the point that I thought was illustrated by Bob McKenzie yesterday. If you sign a 3-year deal, like say Mitch Marner signs a 3-year deal, and it's backloaded like Werenski's, the qualifying offer for a 4th year before becoming a UFA is going to be over $10 million. And that's a killer. That's essentially walking the guy to free agency, even though it's a year short of free agency.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point for sure. I mean, the bottom line is you're going to have to pay these guys if they're that important to your team, and these guys are. You're going to have to pay them. Everybody kind of understands that, but they want to try to use the leverage they have in the contract not to pay them so quickly. And that's one of the things I think the league will want to address in the next CBA.
Yeah, I mean, I would think the GMs, it's easy for us to say, wouldn't you have wanted to have done that in August? Because now there's definitely guys missing training camp because training camp starts Friday. Like more than half of them, if not all of them, are going to miss training camp start. The idea is, will they be there when preseason games start and all of that? I can only imagine like what Don Sweeney's thinking in Boston because that's your top pairing and Chara may be out too. Like you may have 3 new defensemen in there for opening night and none of the ones that you thought were going to be in there.
Yeah, I agree. It's difficult, and the Boston situation too. What's not getting enough attention, even though we did all write about it on Friday, is the fact they haven't even talked to Torrey Krug yet.
Right.
And he's become an important player on that team, in my opinion. He certainly is an offensive catalyst, and I think he's better defensively than anyone ever gives him credit for. He's a competitive guy. He's a feisty guy. So I'm surprised, and I get it that they've got 2 other with Brandon Carlo and McAvoy that they're dealing with RFAs, but I think I'd be working to try to get Krug signed up as well. I think you'd try to get all 3 of those guys, signed, and now you're set for the future. That's a really nice defense to sort of build around, moving forward. So, there's a lot in play in Boston, and Sweeney has his work cut out for him because it's not going to be easy to get all 3 of those guys and make them fit within his structure.
Well, and I'm just muting you just for a sec, Cowboy, because I'm not sure what's going on with the echoing, but I'm just trying something here. But I'll unmute you when you're going to answer. No, the interesting thing is that there were things that came out yesterday regarding Justin Falk. I know Elliot Friedman reported that Falk has, and I know, remember, they signed Jake Gardiner to a 4-year contract. Now they have a guy who's on the bottom pairing right now making over $4 million. That's probably not what Don Waddell, ideally what he wants to do. And they discussed an extension with Falk during the summer and did not come to fruition. Now, apparently they may even have a deal in place with Anaheim, but Anaheim is on Falk's no trade list, and Falk has apparently come out and said, well, I'll go there if I get an extension. So you've got a situation here where the player is in complete control, and if Anaheim can't get him locked up, they're not going to want him as a 1-year rental. So that's an interesting situation for both the Ducks and the Hurricanes.
Well, it is, and the moral of this story is don't give out these no trade clauses so easily.
Right.
It's become an issue, for teams. It's almost feels like now they, it's a veteran player and he wants a limited no trade clause. They go say, oh, sure, I'll do that. Well, now you get in these situations, but I get it. I mean, there are certainly players that deserve no trade clauses. There are a lot of top players that, certainly deserve them. But, I wouldn't give them out as easily as general managers seem to do it. I mean, is Justin Falk, did he achieve the level of importance that he should have gotten at in the last contract? I don't know.
He was an all-star.
He was on a faster track, though. He was one of the USA Hockey top guys. We're going to have you on every Olympic team. You should be an all-star every year. His points have fallen off, and now we worry about his defense. And I think part of it has to do with the way the Hurricanes are run as well, because I think he lost a little bit of power play time with them. He's still on the power play, but I just look at him and I say he has diminished a little bit. You can never go by age. It's just something that's happened. I kind of wonder, though, if Anaheim does have a deal in place for him, they'll get a decent player, but if they would have traded Falk last year, they would have gotten more. There's no question in my mind. Now this year, you're going to get a diminished return on him. That's the bad part because he is a good player.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's all about when you move them, but who knows? If they can't trade him to Anaheim, they could trade him to somebody who, might give them, the kind of deal that they want.
Right.
That's on what's going on. So we'll have to see how that works. But I like the pickup of Gardiner. Who do you have, Falk or Gardiner?
I'd rather have Falk because I know what Gardiner is after watching him for 7 years. And if you're looking for a puck rushing offensive defenseman, I think Gardiner is very good. But I think Falk, even though he's the same type of defenseman, I think he's better in his own end than Gardiner is.
Well, I don't know if this was published today. And to be honest, right now at this point, I would take Gardiner over Falk. I don't know. Oh, let Kevin talk, Mike.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Kev.
Oh, I just said I would take Falk just so we complete the voting there.
Okay. But I did hear today that Montreal offered Gardiner 3 years at a little over $5 per, and Gardiner didn't want it. My sense is Gardiner doesn't want to be near the media right now because he really at times was a target in Toronto.
Yeah.
And I think that he wants to get far away from that. And that's fine. I think that's fine when a player wants to do that.
I think he's had enough of the high pressure of the Canadian market. Yeah. He was singled out in Toronto, I think with good reason at points because he -5 in Game 7 against the Bruins. It wasn't all him, but that'll be on his resume forever. And I think that it was a million. Well, I mean, it was $1.25 million more, but the extra year, he's actually making $1 million more overall if he doesn't get bought out. Or
are you saying that's on his permanent record, Mike? Because everybody threatened us with that as kids, and it never really came to fruition.
It's on his resume, Russ. No, but no, I wanted to bring this up because I noticed a trend in a couple stories here over the last couple days, and I want to ask Kevin on this. So Gardiner turns down more money on a little bit of a shorter term deal with Montreal. Matt Duchene, in a piece by Chris Johnston, said he definitely considered Montreal, but in the end he decided to go to Nashville. You've got those two stories, plus you've got the Aho deal where he signed. If he signs the offer sheet, he was willing to go there. But you would think if Montreal was really serious about it, they would have made a deal that would have been tougher for Carolina to match. Does Montreal now have a problem attracting free agents?
That's a great question. But I think this is more about, and I've talked about this before, in the old days, you always picked your free agent team based on your best guess of whether of their chances of winning the Cup. The problem we now have is that it's impossible to guess who the top teams are with the best chances of winning the Cup.
Right.
Now, since you can't do that, you're looking at the circumstance in which you're going to play. You're either going to look for a place with who you're going to play with, whether the schools, it's a place your wife wants to go to, whether the schools are good for your kids. In Matt Duchene's case, he's a musician. Where better for him to locate than Nashville?
Sure.
Talked about with Gardiner. He just came out of a mega media market in Toronto where it wasn't fun for him, where hockey is a religion. Does he want to go to a place where hockey is also a religion, another mega media market? Maybe worse, and I use that a word in terms of his perspective, in terms of
intensity.
To live your life without not being under a microscope. Well, the best place to do that is Carolina. So in both these cases, I'm not so sure that it was Montreal they were rejecting as much as going to in Duchene's case, Nashville, and in Gardiner's case, a nice quiet market like Carolina. So I think there are some people that cherish the idea of playing in Montreal, and I think there are some who run from it.
Well, Vinny Lecavalier ran from it.
Yeah, no, and there are players who just don't want anything to do with that because they know how tough it is, and how much pressure there is to play in Montreal. But there are other players who think, wow, that's great. I love playing in Montreal. So,
well, Russ, ironically, the guy who wanted to stay there more than anything and who was essentially a legend there was PK Subban, and they traded him because it was at a certain point where if they didn't move him by then, he had a no trade clause and they would never be able to get rid of him. I think that was a factor in it.
Yeah, I heard that Tim Hortons was originally supposed to open in Montreal, but when he asked for a trade, the Leafs said, "Nah, we don't feel like it."
Okay. I don't get that one.
Players have so much freedom now, is my point, that you can make all of these choices. Imagine if someone would have walked into their GM's office back in the day and said, I want to be a musician. Can you trade me to wherever? And if, whatever the closest place, even to LA, to the Kings, and they would have laughed at him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what free agency is about. I mean, free agency is about being able to have the freedom that all three of us have. Like, I work in whatever city I want to. Nobody can tell me.
Sure.
And the NHL, they make a lot of money, but you got to go where they tell you to go.
Right.
Where, in the real world, if you're an engineer, you can work whatever. I mean, maybe there's more money if you work as an engineer in New York, but that's your choice. And the NHL players don't have that. So when they are given the opportunity, if they want to, go to a place where music is king, the music capital, they can do that.
Now, Kevin, I was watching some of the Traverse City rookie tournament online, and it was Detroit versus Toronto. So I got my first look at Morris Seider playing against. I mean, it's not NHL competition. These are players in a couple of years will be in the NHL, but very impressed with his calm and actually his playmaking ability too against a lot of other rookies, but. I know that Russ has said that he thinks that Seider is probably going to make the Wings. I was not dissuaded at all based on what I saw in one game that he's not going to be in the mix for the Red Wings this year.
That he is not going to be?
No, that he's going to be. That I think it was impressed enough that I think it's very reasonable. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, first of all, let's give Russ some credit. Like he told us about him early. The first person that and subsequent to that, I had some NHL folks tell me this too, but he was the first guy that mentioned that he thought he had a chance to go much higher than people thought, and that he thought he had a chance to play right away. And he is a beast. He looks like a man out there, and that's the key. And I think defense, and I don't know whether Russ agrees to me, is the hardest position, even harder than goalie. Like we don't have goalies, usually playing at a young age, but when they do show up, I think they play almost on instincts. And where the defenseman, it's you're skating backwards, guys are skating at you 25 miles an hour, top players in the world, and you got to sort all this out. Where a forward is just trying to get out there and put the puck in the net. So, but I think he's got an opportunity, and here, that's the key. The opportunity is there for him. The defense is so below average that it might be worth it for them to have him learn on the job. So. I don't know what Steve Yzerman is thinking because he plays everything close to the vest, as we all know. So I think they'll give him a chance to play there, and particularly with Mike Green's health in question. Although it does seem like people are saying that he's going to be ready. But Cronwell, who I think some people thought was going to be this number 7 defenseman, has chosen to retire instead. So. There's an option there to bring him in, and I've heard that Chalowski, they think he might benefit by one more year in the minors. So, just
play Seider in all the preseason games and see how he does.
Yeah, well, and it's not unprecedented. I mean, we've seen guys step in. Carlo stepped right from the draft, right to the Bruins. Cam Fowler stepped.
I remember Carlo. I mean, Zabora was taken ahead of him by his own team.
Carlo was a 6th round pick.
Yeah. So there are plenty of players that have done it. Maybe not plenty, but there have been some players that have done it.
It's harder on defense, though. There's definitely fewer examples.
Now,
Russ, exactly. Yeah.
Now, Russ, there was some illness with Capo Caco, the number 2 overall pick, earlier in the tournament, but he played his first game yesterday and scored 4 points. Made it look a bit sort of easy.
It looked really easy, but the Rangers were losing that game. I didn't watch the whole game, but I watched, I want to say, a period and a half. I did see the goal. I mean, it was getting to the point in this game where the Caco, and I talked about this on the show yesterday, Mike, if you remember.
Yeah.
The Henriksen, Caco, Kravtsov line was going to be hell for any of these rookies to cover. and literally Kako just skated circles around him. And you know that he is ready for the NHL. That was never in doubt. What I think it will be interesting is that they actually do put him with Kravtsov, because I feel like he's a little bit ahead of Kravtsov in ability, even though Kravtsov played in the KHL. And so I think he could help Kravtsov along. And that's something where maybe the Rangers have learned something there. And instead of putting Kako on the top line, maybe they put him on the third line with Kravtsov and sort of let them gel and get some chemistry going to add additional scoring. Because I think the original thought was, hey, Kako is going to be on the first two lines, but maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should start him with him, let him be the star of that line, and that could be a nice thing for them, because it's funny. And the other thing that really stood out, and again, I've had to really beat the drum on this, is with Adam Fox. So many people question me when they say, you really think Fox is going to be that good? Mm-hmm. I don't know how many times I have to tell people he really is going to be that good, because he's smart, but he also understands the position and he has pushback, and he's very understated offensively. He's not a flashy guy, right? Mm-hmm. But he gets the job done offensively with passing, with his shot, everything else, because he's a smart hockey player and he's a really good athlete. I think he sort of creeps up on people. So that's somebody who, again, people looked at the Rangers and said, well, look at all the defense is kind of askew. And I'm like, I think Adam Fox will step in like Will Butcher did. I really do.
Yeah, somebody in the chat just said Boston did terrible on those 3 first-round picks. Not really. They got DeBrusk. I think Senyshyn is going to end up being an NHLer. The Zaboral pick is the one that I think is probably going to be the bust or the failure.
It's still a good draft. I did write about that draft last year, Mike, because Lawson's good.
Yeah. Carlo's good, and there's somebody else from that draft too. But everybody, just think, everybody is looking at the fact that they didn't take Barzal and they didn't take Colin White. So and then that's the thing. But all right, let's move on to the team preview. I'm going to go to Kevin first on this, but let me just do the little breakdown here of the Calgary Flames, who they won the Western Conference regular season title, their first seed in the Western Conference playoffs, 50-25-7, but ran into what we thought was going to be, a challenging first round match against Colorado. The goaltending of Mike Smith, he played well at times, but that was inconsistent, and I think that cost them. He is gone. They've brought in Cam Talbot as the number 1 goaltender, or at least a 1A. To their other goaltender who's as a 1A 1B situation. They bought out Michael Stone. They've had some injuries with Valimaki going down to an ACL injury. The big thing, Kevin, is the 1-for-1 swap of James Neal for Milan Lucic. I don't see that is the prototypical definition of the crap for crap deal. And I'm not saying because honestly, they both were disasters with their other teams. So these other, Ken Holland and Treliving are basically hoping they can get more out of these guys than the almost nothing they were getting out of them in the previous years. What do you think of the Calgary Flames going into the regular season?
Well, let's start with analysis of the trade. I thought that was a better deal for Edmonton. Lucic really it doesn't seem to be able to skate at a level to be any level of contributor, and James Neal, that was a disastrous acquisition for the Flames. He did zero last year to help them. But I think, I don't know whether he can restore, but I think that there's a better chance that he could, he's consistently been a 25 goal scorer in his career. There's at least more of a chance that he's going to be a scorer in Edmonton there is than Lucic is going to be a significant contributor. So, it was a deal that of 2 teams getting rid of a problem player, but I like it better from Edmonton than I did from Calgary. But saying all that, what happened to Flames last year is really kind of demonstrates the sort of the agony of the parity NHL. The reward for being such a really good regular season team was to get a team that everybody in hockey knew was primed to be a decent playoff team. and that's the Colorado Avalanche. And what is there to say about the Flames? I mean, I think they'll be right where they were last season, provided they get signed again. I think they've got a decent defense. They are going to score some goals. Their goaltending, to me, is going to be the same issue it was last year. Who knows? They've even though it wasn't really a trade, but they've essentially traded goalies with Edmonton. Now they've got Talbot as their other goalie with Rittich, and they'll just have to see. But I would say this: if it becomes a case where Calgary's goaltending looks uncertain or uneven, I think they've got to act boldly, because I think this team is good enough to be a contender, but they've got to have consistency of goaltending, to be sure. And if those two guys can't deliver, they've got to go get it and be aggressive about it.
Russ, I don't know whether they really made much of an improvement in goal. I mean, I'm skeptical of Talbot. He had that fantastic year. I think it was 3 years ago when the Oilers made the run to the second round. His numbers went down since then. He goes to the Flyers. They don't use him, which I still don't understand what happened.
Nobody does.
And now, now I think he has the inside track. Even though Rittich had a good year, I think he has the inside track and being the guy who's the go-to guy and the guy who plays in the playoffs. But what do you think?
Well, I think first thing is a guy like Oliver Shillington's real important. And, yeah, as far as goaltending, I like Cam Talbot. I think that's a slight upgrade. But I think Shillington is a guy who played 38 games last year but nothing in the playoffs. So now he's going to have to jump from that to playing, 70-something games. I think he's up for the task. Remember, he is only 22. He had 8 points. I'm not looking for a lot of offense. The offense was overblown when people talked about it when he was drafted. But I think he could fill that gap. He's not Valimaki, but he's pretty good. Another guy that they could get some surprise offense from is Dylan Dubé. He was more than a point a game in the AHL last year, and I think he had 8 points in 25 games for them in the regular season. That's another guy and he didn't play at all in the playoffs. That he had 5 points in 25 games. That's a guy who really at 21 could break out for them. So if they got good goaltending and some of these younger players stepped up, because let's say Tkachuk is a holdout, they probably can still do very well, because Gaudreau had 99 points this year. The fact that he could get 100 points this year, I do kind of wonder now in retrospect how many teams are kicking themselves that they could have had Johnny Gaudreau. It is an amazing thing. He's already got 387 points in 394 games. He was drafted 104th overall. It wasn't that long ago in 2011. That will go down as one of the biggest steals of all time if he becomes a Hall of Fame player, which right now he's on track for that. And that it wasn't like he came out of nowhere. He was called Johnny Hockey. Everybody knew what he was in college. He was fantastic in college. So the fact that he slipped in that draft, man, that's the amazing thing about the draft to me.
Kevin, we sort of buried the lead with Tkachuk in the sense that, he's one of that RFA class and we don't know when he's going to sign. I mean, he had a big impact on that team last year, 30 goals, 70 points. He's a rough and tumble player, and they're not exactly a really, really deep team. I mean, they have talent throughout the lineup, but offensively, I think that they need Tkachuk there. And if he misses, say, 4 or 6 weeks of the regular season, it's going to hurt the Flames.
Yeah, no doubt. I completely agree with you on that, because they feed off his energy, and he's one of those guys that can be a top player and still provide the kind of physical lift, and he's a guy that's always pushing and always pressing, and I just think that they're feeling pressure to get him signed, because they know that too. Like, they can't imagine if he was a Nylander type player, and if they get off to a slow start, I don't know that this team will be able to recover. I just think they need to get off to a good start, and they were so consistent last year. I would think that it's worth it to pay a little bit more than you want to pay, just to have that group back and have Tkachuk in place, kind of leading the charge and carrying the flag for them.
Yeah, and then just to finish off this, they are the team that is leading right now in terms of professional tryout contracts for PTOs for training camp. They've invited 5 people, and one of them is Andrew McDonald, who might have a chance to make it based on the fact that Valimaki is going to be out for the season. Another one is Devontae Smith-Pelly, and we saw how the impact he had with Washington in the playoffs. But he's a physical guy, and if there's a physical gap, maybe he's the guy that they sign just as a rough and tumble guy to fill in for Kachuk. He will never be able to match Kachuk's offense, but he might be able to fill that physical quotient. Okay, some questions here.
Actually, Mike, before the questions, I can tell you the breakdown of Zacha's contract. It's 3 years, $6.75 million, and his last year he gets $3 million. So that's a real good deal. What did we say? He had 13 goals last year.
Yeah.
He definitely could get 20. You put him with the right guy, it definitely could happen. I've seen a maturity in this game. I know people had these unrealistic expectations because he was drafted high, but this is a good signing for both sides. Because yesterday, like I said, if they were going to let him go to the KHL and develop there, I didn't have a problem with it. But I did say they're going to miss his offense, so it was smart they got him signed.
Okay, going into the questions here, Funky Cold Zadina asks, it's amazing how small players still get passed on. DeBrincat, now Cole Caulfield. Kevin, is the prejudice against small players finally going to go away when we keep seeing over and over Goudreau, DeBrincat? They're having success.
Yeah, and Atkinson is another player that has been consistent in his scoring. Yeah, I didn't get the whole Caulfield thing. In that draft, I thought he was deserving of going in the top 5. Just with the season he had, and like I've said over and over this, but that was a big time record he broke.
Yeah,
I mean, when you look at all the players, Eichel, Matthews, Larkin, Patrick Kane, all the players who have come through that program, and who's the king of goal scoring? It's Cole Caulfield, and I thought, look, I get he's small, but I thought Alex DeBrincat's 2 years in the NHL should have showed everybody because they were really similar players. And DeBrincat said, he loved his being Caulfield's, release. He just thought it was superior when you factor all that in. So I hope so. I mean, I think he's going to be an instant standout when he gets his chance in the NHL, and then that will just be one more evidence that we should a top player is a top player, no matter how big they are.
I mean, Kev, what's really funny about it is he had 60-something goals. So you would think, if nothing else, scoring your 60-something goals would get you in the top 10, and it didn't. You'll talk about the records he broke, and now, like this past weekend, in exhibition play, he already had 4 goals. He might be one of these guys, and it's been a very long time. I think it was 93, 94, that could get 40 goals in college, in a college season. And because there's Turcotte's playing there with him, and Dylan Holloway, who could go anywhere from 2nd to 5th or 6th in the draft.
I think he finished with 72 goals last year. I think
72 was it? Yeah, I know it was 6. I thought it was high 60s. Either way, that's a ton of goals. I told Mike, I think Caulfield could finish out his college season like Cale Makar and sign right away with Montreal and start playing games if there's still games to play.
Yeah. So.
Okay, let's see. Mark Peterson asks, if you had to add a goalie for the Flames, who is the likely candidate out there? Corey Crawford? Well, okay, let me just say this. Corey Crawford would fit. Even Robin Leonard would fit, because if you're talking about rentals, they're 1 year and then free agents. So that makes sense. If you're looking at a long-term situation, you keep going back to Jonathan Quick, but I don't know whether Jonathan Quick – I know he's got no trade protection. Who's to say he wants to go to Calgary? So, I mean, the goaltender market is tough, Kev.
Yeah, it's always hard to determine, before even training camp starts, like who would be the guys that we look at. And a lot will depend on, how goalies, perform. And, with the way now we're, and we talk about this every year, but but at the NHL media tour, Ras was talking about that it now seems to be the days of goalies playing 70 games are going to be gone. So because of that, and we're having more 1A, 1B, I think there are going to be more options because, the 1B goalies are going to be playing enough that where you might consider trading the 1A or, trading the 1B. So we're going to have to see just basically how it develops and, who's available. But I think Quick is a good option if he'd be willing to go. If you're Calgary, don't you want a guy who has, won the cup before?
Oh, yeah.
Knows how to do it and, would not, it won't be new to him. So
the only problem, like with Quick, is the same problem with Crawford. Is in the last few years they haven't played a ton of games. You look at Crawford; it's been 3 years just since he's played 55 games. So
that's right.
That's the part that we may never get there for Crawford. That's the problem.
And you also see that Rob Blake is sort of prepared for this eventual move because he's extended both Cal Peterson and Jack Campbell. So he's got the young goaltenders locked up for at least a couple years. So he would keep his prices low on a goaltender if he ended up shipping Quick out. And they are,
they didn't court Cal Peterson just because they wanted to keep him away from the Sabres. You know what I mean?
Right.
They looked down the road on this one, and it was a smart look down the road.
Okay, last question. Barticus 1 asks any news on Patrick Marleau. I haven't heard anything. Kevin, have you heard? Now, it was surprising that San Jose did not go for him after he was bought out by Carolina after Toronto traded him. Now, supposedly he's looking for other opportunities, but you're 3 days away from training camp. You would think that if there was interest out there, maybe they have to wait until later on in training camp.
That's what I think is going to happen. He's going to be the option of suffers a big injury because, you can sell that to fans and to your team. If somebody big goes down and you can bring in a guy, a proven scorer like Marleau. So, he's probably going to be the one that's kind of floating out there that will be the injury replacement. So that's my guess.
All right. Well, great show, guys. We will be back tomorrow early with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.